Hello, and welcome back to the next class in this online series, Talmud for Beginners. In last class, the first class, we briefly, as much as we could, we discussed the history behind the oral tradition. We traced back how things evolved. The Mishnah was redacted about the 2nd century, and then following that we had the Tanoim, the Amoraim, which interpreted the Mishnah, and that ultimately became the Gemara, the Talmud. You had the Babylonian Talmud that was redacted in approximately the 6th century, and the Jerusalem Talmud approximately the 4th century. Following that, we have the commentaries, the Gaonim, the early medieval commentaries, and then the postmodern commentaries, the Achronim. And that was the introduction before we start studying the Talmud. Today, I'd like to start studying the Talmud. And if you remember, we had one of the class resources last week were the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Seeds, festivals, women, damages, holy things, and purity. Our subject matter that we'll be studying is in the 4th order, that of damages. And if you look back at your sheet, you'll see that the first 3 tractates are Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, first, middle, and last gate, which used to be one large tractate called Nezikin, the 30 chapters of Nezikin, but it was broken down and split into 3 tractates. And this deals with damages, but not just, damages and torts, but not just that, but in general, monetary law. The first one, Baba Kama, the first gate, deals with damages, whether it be physical, man physically damaging his friend, or an animal damaging a person. Baba Basra, the last gate, deals primarily with property law, the responsibilities and the rights that the owner of a piece of property has. And the middle one, Baba Metzia, which we'll be studying from Baba Metzia, discusses all types of civil law, whether it be if someone finds a lost item, who is the owner, laws about loans, rentals, how to deal with workers, and also finally, laws about guardianship. The 3rd chapter, which is Hamafkid, that's our chapter, deals with laws about guardianship. Hamafkid means one who deposits a pikadon. Pikadon is an item that has been deposited into the possession of another for safekeeping. And we call that person a shomer. Shomer means a custodian, where he has assumed custodial responsibilities to look after and safeguard the item which the owner has deposited in his possession. Now, if we just simply approach our perek, our chapter, the 3rd chapter, we'll notice already right away a classic Talmudic experience which portrays the challenges and difficulties of studying the Talmud. And that is that our perek, our chapter, right away, from the very beginning, begins to discuss intricate and complex questions about difficult scenarios with regards to all different types of guardians. And there are several types of guardians, 4 shomrim. And the question is, but we didn't even know who these 4 guardians are. And we didn't know their names, we didn't know their laws, we didn't know the basic infrastructure that outlines their status before we can begin to discuss real intricate details about them. Where are they discussed? They're discussed later on, not in the 3rd chapter, but in the 7th chapter of Bava Metzia, page 93. There we have several pages where the sages speak about them. So it's almost like before you start studying chapter 3, you're supposed to know already chapter 7. The sages have said, they've described the Talmudic book, sometimes anim b'makom echad va'ashirim b'makom acher. Sometimes the words of the Talmud are poor in one area, yet rich in another area. And not every time the Talmud brings up a certain topic does it exhaust that topic entirely, but you have to reference to other places and know them already to be able to understand what it is that you're studying in this place. So in order to be able to even begin our chapter, we're going to have to give a few introductions, to explain a few concepts, explain who these guardians are, so that we'll understand the very first Mishnah. There are plenty other new concepts along the way, and when we get up to them, we'll talk about them. But today I want to go through, and you have your class resources, which you can download on your screen, the two papers that we'll be studying from right now to give ourselves some background behind the subject matter of this chapter. The first page is titled The Four Guardians, and what you see there is a snippet from the Bible in Exodus chapter 22, verses 6 to 14, which is in the Torah portion of Mishpatim, civil law. That's where the Torah talks about the obligations and the details, the legalities about the four guardians. We're going to go through the verses. When you read them, there is no mention of particular guardians, but the sages have identified, and will study and analyze how they've identified these guardians based on the different wordings in the verses. If you notice in the English side, there's some bold typeface, and obviously in the Bible, in the original, there's no bold, no italicized, no underlined, but I put it in there just so you should know which things the sages really focused on. Let's begin from verse 6. I'll read the Hebrew and then the English. If a person gives his friend money or articles to safeguard, and they are stolen from the man's home, then if the thief is found, Yishalem Shnaim, he must pay twofold. If the thief is not found, Im lo yimatze haganov, v'nikrav balabayis el ha'elakim, the homeowner must approach the judges, Im lo shalach yadei b'melechas ri'ehu, if he has not laid his hand upon his friend's property. Al kol dvar pesha, in every case of dishonesty, al shamer, al shur, al chamer, al seh, al salma, whether about an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, al kol aveda, asher yomer ki hu zeh, or any lost article about which he says, this is it, ad ha'elekim yovod var shnehem, both their claims shall come to the court. Asher yashun elekim, whomever the court declares guilty, Yishalem Shnaim L'Ri'ehu, must pay twofold to his friend. So before we begin further, we're talking about someone who has given his friend money or another article. And noticed we're talking about a case of theft. It was stolen from him. And if the thief is found, then they have to come to court, and there's a procedure in court, which we'll talk about later. If the thief is not found, if the thief is found, he pays twofold actually, and that's the fine of a thief we'll talk about. If he's not found, then they come to court and there's a certain procedure. Notice that it doesn't say anywhere that the custodian has to pay. Bear that in mind. Let's continue verse 9. If a person gives his friend a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any animal to safeguard, umeis or nishbar, it dies, it was broken, or was looted, ein royeh, without witnesses. Shvuas Hashem tiyeh ben shneim, an oath of Hashem shall be between both of them. Im lo yishalach yadim b'melechas re'ehu, if he did not lay his hand upon his friend's property. V'lukach ba'alav v'lo yishalem, v'lukach, the owner shall accept the oath, and he shall not pay. V'im ganev miyimai,